It was a cold, rainy night in Iboko. The streets were quiet, the kind of silence that made every drop of rain sound louder. At 2 a.m, Zahara stood outside her home, barefoot in her old slippers, her thin wrapper clinging to her skin, soaked from the rain. She had been thrown out by Obinna, her husband of 6 years. His voice had been loud, full of anger and pride, calling her useless like she was nothing. From the upstairs window, a young woman, his new girlfriend, peeked out and laughed, enjoying the scene like it was a show. But Zahara did not shout. She did not cry. She just stood still, with her arms crossed, her face calm. The neighbours peeked through curtains, whispering, but no one came out. They had all seen how Zahara always walked with her head low, always obedient, always quiet. Many thought she was weak, but as she stood in the cold rain, something inside her shifted. She wasn't weak. She was just tired. Tired of being quiet. Tired of being small. Obinna had no idea that tonight would be the beginning of a story he'd never forget. The rain poured harder, but Zahara didn't move. Her wrapper stuck to her back, her feet sinking slightly into the mud. Still, she stood tall. There were no tears. There was no begging, only silence. And something new. Strength. The kind that doesn't need to shout. The kind that waits. And that night, while the rest of Iboko slept, Zahara took her first step away from shame and towards something no one saw coming, not even Obinna. Zahara kept walking slowly through the muddy road, her slippers sinking with every step. The rain had not stopped, and her wrapper was still wet, clinging to her body. But she didn't care. She felt numb, not just from the cold, but from the pain in her heart. The man she gave 6 years of her life to had thrown her out like trash. No warning, no shame, just insults and laughter. But even in the middle of all that pain, her heart stayed steady. Her mind was clearer than it had ever been. She felt like something had changed inside her. Something strong, something quiet, but powerful. As she walked, she reached into her wrapper pocket and pulled out a small phone. It was old. The screen cracked. She hadn't checked it all night. Her fingers were shaking, not from fear, but from the cold. She wiped the screen and saw one missed call. Her eyes widened. It was from a number she had saved long ago, but never called back. Mrs. Kamanzi. For a moment, Zahara just stared at the screen. Her heart began to beat faster. Mrs. Kamanzi was a famous investor from Rwanda, rich, smart, and known for lifting up women across Africa. A few months ago, Zahara had sent her a sample of a homemade skincare cream. It was something Zahara had been making quietly at home for years, using local herbs and oils passed down from her grandmother. Her skin always glowed, and people often asked what she used. She tried to tell Obinna about the idea, how she wanted to sell it, build a brand, maybe grow a small business. But he had laughed. He told her to stop wasting her time, that no one would buy a village cream. So Zahara kept it to herself, but she never stopped dreaming. And now, this missed call. Her hands trembled again. This time, from a mix of fear and hope, she pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, then connected. "Hello? Zahara?" came a warm, firm voice on the other end. It was Mrs. Kamanzi. Yes, this is Zahara," she said softly, her voice shaking. "I've been trying to reach you," Mrs. Kamanzi said. "My team and I tested your formula. It's amazing. We want it. We're offering you full rights with equity. You will stay on as co-founder." Zahara stopped walking. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't understand everything at first. Equity, co-founder. But the one thing she did understand was this. Someone believed in her. Someone with power. Someone with money. Someone who didn't laugh. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not from sadness. They were from shock, from joy, from something that felt like a second chance. She looked up at the sky, still dark with early morning clouds. The rain hit her face, but she didn't wipe it away. She smiled. For the first time in a long time, she smiled. "Thank you," Zahara whispered into the phone. "No," Mrs. Kamanzi replied. "Thank you for creating something so beautiful. This is just the beginning." The call ended, but Zahara stood still in the mud for a long time, holding the phone close to her chest. Her mind was racing. The pain from earlier still lived inside her, but now it was sitting beside something stronger, a new kind of fire. She thought about all the times Obinna rolled his eyes when she spoke, all the times he told her she was just a woman, just a wife, not smart enough, and now here she was, chosen, seen, valued. She looked down at her muddy feet, then up at the road ahead. The sun was starting to rise slowly behind the clouds. The darkness was fading. Zahara took a deep breath. Then she started walking again. But this time, her steps were stronger. Her chin was higher. Her heart was beating with purpose. She had nothing in her hands. No bag, no money, no home to go back to. But in her heart, she carried something better. A yes. A big, life-changing yes from someone powerful. A door had opened. A real door. One that would take her far away from this small muddy road in Iboko. As the morning light grew brighter, Zahara kept walking, and if anyone had seen her just then, walking barefoot with wet clothes and a tiny smile, they might have thought she was just another woman going nowhere. But they would be wrong. Zahara was going somewhere, and it had just begun. As Zahara walked slowly along the quiet road, still wet from the rain and holding her small phone tightly, something suddenly came back to her mind, something she hadn't thought about in a long time. A memory. It came like a flash of light in her head. She stopped walking for a second, her eyes wide. She remembered a piece of paper, a paper Obinna had once asked her to sign. It happened 5 years ago, when they had just moved into the house. One evening, Obinna came home with some documents and said he needed her signature for a small bank loan. He told her it was nothing serious, just a formality, and that it was in her name to help process it faster. Zahara, being the obedient wife she was back then, didn't ask many questions, but something in her spirit didn't feel right that day. She didn't argue, but after signing the paper, she quietly took a picture of it and gave a copy to her old school friend, a lawyer named Tega. Tega looked at the paper and told her, "Zahara, this is not a loan form. This says you are part owner of the house." Zahara was shocked. Obinna had lied, but Tega advised her not to confront him. She said, "Just keep quiet. One day, you might need this." Zahara had kept that copy hidden with Tega ever since. She'd forgotten all about it, until now. Her heart started beating fast. She didn't even feel the cold anymore. She turned around quickly and started walking back toward the center of town. Her steps were faster now. There was no time to waste. The sun was not yet up, but the sky was slowly turning from dark blue to grey. She needed to get to the town hall before it opened. She called Tega as she walked, her fingers shaking slightly. The phone rang once, twice. Then her friend answered, half asleep. "Tega, it's Zahara. Do you still have that paper?" she asked in a breathless voice. "Of course," Tega replied. "I never throw things like that away. Why? I need it. I need it right now." "I'll meet you at the town hall," Tega said without asking more. She could hear the urgency in Zahara's voice. Zahara felt a new kind of fire inside her. She wasn't walking now. She was almost running. The mud splashed up her legs, but she didn't care. Her slippers nearly came off, but she didn't stop. Every step brought her closer to something she had never dared to dream of. Justice. By the time she reached the edge of town, the sky had turned a soft orange. The town was still quiet. Shops were closed. Cars were parked. The streets were empty. But Zahara kept going until she stood in front of the old town hall building, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. A few minutes later, Tega arrived with a brown folder in her hand. Her hair was messy, and she wore a big sweater, but her eyes were full of purpose. "Here," she said, handing Zahara the folder. "It's all here. The paper, the stamp, everything. I even printed an extra copy." Zahara took the folder with both hands. She looked at her friend with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Tega said with a small smile. "Let's go inside and make it official." When the doors to the town hall opened, Zahara and Tega were the first ones inside. They walked to the front desk and explained the situation. The woman at the counter looked surprised, but nodded. "If this paper is real, and it's notarized, you have a legal claim." They went into a small office and sat down with an official. He wore glasses and looked serious as he read through the document. After a long silence, he looked up and said, "Yes, this gives you legal rights to the property. You are a co-owner." Zahara closed her eyes. A wave of relief washed over her. All the years she had felt small, powerless, forgotten. Now they began to fade. She wasn't just a woman who had been thrown out into the rain. She wasn't just someone who made cream in the kitchen. She had power now. Legal power. Proof. The man gave her more papers to sign and told her the next steps. Tega explained everything in simple words, helping her understand what it all meant. They would file the court order today. It would take only a few hours. As Zahara stepped out of the town hall, the sun was now shining above the rooftops. The morning had truly begun. She held the folder close to her chest like it was a treasure. It wasn't just a paper. It was her key, her comeback, her answer to everything Obinna had ever said or done to her. And she knew exactly where she was going next. By 10 a.m., the sun was high in the sky, shining over the town of Iboko. The rain from the night before had dried, but the smell of wet soil still lingered. The same street that had watched Zahara walk away in the dark now watched her return. Not alone, not weak, and not silent. She walked with calm steps, dressed in clean clothes, her head held high. Behind her walked a lawyer in a dark suit, 2 police officers in uniform, and a quiet man holding a briefcase, the buyer. They moved as a team, with purpose. The neighbours peeked through their windows again, just like they did last night. But this time, they weren't whispering. They were staring, surprised and confused. Something big was happening. Zahara reached the gate, the same one she had been pushed out of in the middle of the night. This time, she didn't need to knock. One of the police officers opened the gate, and she stepped inside with steady feet. Everything looked the same. The front yard, the plants, even the broken chair on the veranda. But it felt different. This time, Zahara was not a guest. She was coming home on her own terms. Obinna came out of the house slowly. He was shirtless, wearing only shorts, and rubbing his eyes like someone who just woke up from a dream. He looked confused. He saw the officers, the lawyer, the buyer, and then he saw Zahara, standing tall, calm, powerful. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Zahara didn't wait for him to speak. She reached into her bag and pulled out 2 things, a signed check and a court order. She walked straight up to him, held them out, and said in a clear, strong voice, "This house is mine now. You have 15 minutes to pack and leave." The yard went silent. Obinna blinked, still not understanding. "What is this?" he asked, trying to laugh. "Is this a joke?" The lawyer stepped forward. "This is very real," he said. "Your wife, correction, your co-owner, has exercised her legal right. The papers are signed. The house has been sold. She has used her share to buy the rest. It's legal and final." Obinna looked at the papers, then at the officers. One of them nodded. "You need to leave. Now." His face changed. The pride, the arrogance, all of it began to melt away. He looked around as if hoping someone would speak up for him. But the neighbours were quiet. Even his new girlfriend, who had laughed from the window the night before, was nowhere to be seen. Zahara stood still, not angry, not emotional, just calm. That calm scared him more than shouting ever could. "You can't do this," he said weakly. "I already did," Zahara replied. The buyer, a quiet man in glasses, stepped forward and handed the lawyer another document. "We're ready to take over the property now," he said. "Everything is in order." Obinna stood frozen. He looked at Zahara like he was seeing her for the first time. This was not the soft, quiet wife who waited on him hand and foot. This was a woman who had been pushed to the edge and had come back stronger. He walked back into the house, slowly, dragging his feet. The police officers followed him, watching as he gathered a few clothes and personal items. Zahara didn't move. She stayed right there, in the middle of the yard, the sun warming her face. 15 minutes passed like a movie scene. When Obinna finally walked out of the house, carrying a small bag, he didn't say a word. He didn't even look at Zahara. He just walked out the same gate she had been thrown out of. But this time, it was him leaving in shame. The neighbours who had judged her, whispered about her, now stood outside, clapping slowly. One woman even called out, "Queen Zahara!" and the name caught on like fire. A boy nearby pulled out his phone and started recording. Zahara didn't smile. Not yet. She just turned to the lawyer and nodded. "It's done," he said. She looked around the house. The same walls that once trapped her now felt like freedom. It was hers, all of it, not because someone gave it to her, but because she took her power back. Then she walked to the steps, climbed onto the small porch, and turned back for one last look at the gate. It was still open, but this time she was standing inside, and she was never going to be pushed out again. The moment Obinna walked out of the gate, with his small bag and his pride crushed, something powerful was already happening, not just in that little compound in Iboko, but far beyond. One of the neighbours, a teenage boy named Kunle, had been standing across the street with his phone from the very beginning. He had caught everything on video, from the moment Zahara walked through the gate with the police and lawyer, to the way she calmly handed over the court order, and the final scene of Obinna leaving with his head down. Kunle didn't say a word. He just recorded quietly, his hands steady, his eyes wide. He knew what he was witnessing wasn't normal. It was something big. Within 30 minutes, the video was posted online. Kunle added a simple caption. "This is how you rise from the ashes. # Queen Zahara, Mwash Iboko takeover." At first, it was only local people watching, but within hours, the video had spread across Nigeria. By evening, it had reached Kenya. By midnight, it was trending in Ghana. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. A woman who had been thrown out in the rain, humiliated and laughed at, had returned the next morning like a queen with law, power and grace on her side. Comments flooded in like a storm. "This is the real definition of boss lady. Zahara is the energy we need in 2025. Who said quiet women are weak?" People began calling her Queen of Comebacks, a name that stuck fast. Memes were created. Short clips of her handing over the court papers played over dramatic music. Even news pages started sharing the story with titles like "The Woman Who Took Back Her Power" and "Iboko's Silent Lioness." Strangers began tagging their sisters, mothers, and friends in the video. Many said Zahara gave them hope. Some wrote about their own silent struggles and how watching her story reminded them that quiet doesn't mean powerless. She became a symbol, a quiet storm. A woman who did not fight with shouting or fists, but with her mind, her plan, and her proof. The house Zahara now owned became famous. People started calling it the comeback house. Women would walk by just to take pictures at the gate. Some even knocked, asking to meet her. At first, Zahara stayed quiet, watching the video go viral from inside her home. She read the comments, tears sometimes falling from her eyes, not from sadness, but from the shock of being seen, heard, and celebrated for the first time in her life. She couldn't believe how quickly things had changed. Just a few days ago, she was being laughed at by Obinna's girlfriend from the upstairs window. Now, she was being invited to speak on women empowerment podcasts. Beauty influencers wanted to review her skincare line. Even Mrs. Kamanzi, the investor from Rwanda, sent her a message saying, "Your brand story is going to inspire millions. Let's include this video in our marketing, if you agree." Zahara sat on her balcony one evening with her phone in hand, watching the video again. She saw herself standing strong while Obinna looked weak. She heard her own voice, calm and clear, saying, "This house is mine now. You have 15 minutes. She paused the video and smiled. Not a big smile, just a soft one. The kind that comes when you finally feel peace. Later that night, Kunle, the teenage boy who had posted the video, came to her gate with his mother. He looked shy and nervous. "Auntie Zahara," he said, "I hope you're not angry that I posted the video. I didn't mean to shame anyone. I just thought people should see it." Zahara looked at him and said gently, "I'm not angry. You showed the truth." His mother added, "You've made every woman in this street proud." And she had. Zahara had become a new kind of hero, not because she screamed, not because she fought physically, but because she remembered who she was, used her brain, and moved in silence until it was time to speak. From that day on, People didn't call her weak or quiet. They called her a leader, a lioness, a queen. And everywhere the video played, it told women one simple thing: you can rise, even from the mud, even in silence, even after being thrown out in the rain. You can rise, and the whole world will watch. 1 month later, the same house that once felt cold and broken was now full of life and joy. Zahara had turned her pain into purpose. In the wide backyard, women from all over the region sat on soft mats, sipping herbal tea, listening to soft music, and talking about healing, business, and sisterhood. It was her first wellness event, a dream she once buried deep in her heart, now alive and real. Some women had travelled from nearby towns, others from across the country. They came not just for skincare or health tips, but to meet the woman whose story gave them hope. Colourful canopies shaded the garden. There were scented candles, fruit bowls, handmade soaps, and laughter in the air. Zahara had invited herbalists, yoga teachers, and speakers to guide the women. Many of them had watched the viral video. They now looked at Zahara like she was more than just a woman. She was a symbol. Meanwhile, at the market in town, Obinna sat behind a small wooden table selling cheap phone chargers. He looked tired, older somehow. People passed him without a second glance. Some whispered, others laughed. His pride was gone, and the world had moved on. Even the girl he once threw Zahara out for had disappeared. Nobody came to sit beside him now. Back at the house, Zahara stood on the balcony, her eyes calm, her spirit light. She looked down at the crowd in her garden, then up at the sky. The breeze touched her face gently as she whispered to herself, "They thought throwing me out would end me, but they didn't know I was just getting started." And truly, she was. This was only the beginning.